I will hand over to Dr. Chrisse Gale in 1 second. And Dr. Chrisse has been our backbone to all the seminars for all of you who've been following us. Now, Chrisse will frame and introduce the subject, and then she will be followed by Bonifat Owindo from Ghana and Mr. Justin Lungu from Zimbabwe, who will share with us their practical everyday work and tell us about how they, in their everyday work, try to prevent separation. Yes, so I will hand over to Chrisse, and thank you, Chrisse, for being here today.
Thank you so much, Rita, and I apologise to everyone for my lack of voice, and also I apologise if I'm going to be coughing a little bit. It's taken over 1.5 years, almost 2 years for COVID to get to me, but it finally got to me. I apologise to everyone if I'm not on top form today, but I felt this topic was so important that I really wanted to be here. I am going to speak a little bit about the 2019 UN resolution on the protection and the promotion of the rights of children. And I'm going to set the scene a little bit about what is in the resolution and why it's so important that we prevent separation of children from their families when it's unnecessary. But I think the 2 other speakers who you've just heard Rita speak about, who are going to join me today, are the most important part of this seminar, because they're the ones that are actually going to bring in their lived experience of delivering what they've also experienced themselves, but also what the work they're now doing to help prevent separation and to give us some really good ideas about what we might be doing with our programs. There will be 2 presentations, and then there will be some breakout groups when you have an opportunity to talk to each other. And then at the end of the session today, we'll also have a question and answer session. So I'd be grateful if you do have any questions, just to hold on to them while the speakers are speaking. And if you want to put questions in the chat box or wait until we get to the Q&A session at the end, that would be fantastic. It's just because some of the answers might come up while people are giving presentations, or you might discuss them in the group work you're going to do. So I'm going to try and share my screen, and I have a couple of videos, so I really hope that this is going to work today. Can you see my screen? Because I can't see my PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, can you see it? You see my presentation, yeah? Okay, just to say that when I see my presentation, I can't see any of you. So if anything goes wrong, somebody just open your microphone and tell me. So as we said today, I'm going to be speaking about the UN resolution, which was formalized in 2019, which is the promotion and the protection of the rights of children. This is a really important resolution because it's the first time really there's a lot in a resolution that is really focused on preventing separation of children from parental care when it's not necessary. Just a quick recap for those of you who've already seen this slide in previous seminars. On the 30th anniversary of the adoption of the Convention of the Rights of the Child, there was a decision taken to for the UN General Assembly to open up and ratify a brand new UN resolution. And we were delighted when actually the topic of this new UN resolution was about children at risk of losing parental care or those who become separated. And this was really a very exciting step for us in promoting these very important messages we're going to be talking about today. And just to say that the UN resolution reaffirms many of the other international treaties. In fact, probably the first 6 or 7 pages of this new resolution looks at all the relevant international treaties and reminds us that it's not just the CRC and the optional protocols and the UN guidelines for alternative care of children that are important, but so are all the other international treaties, as well as the principles contained in those treaties and the principles in the CRC, including best interests of the child, non-discrimination, participation, survival and development that are very, very important. And the UN resolution, the 2019 resolution, also underscores the importance of the Sustainable Development Goals agenda. So in terms of roles and responsibilities, first and foremost, and this is very important for the discussion we're going to be having today, the resolution recognises the family as having the primary responsibility for the nurturing and protection of children, that everything the family does should be in the best interest of the child, that it should be for their full and harmonious development, and that children should grow up in a family environment in an atmosphere of happiness, love, and understanding. And for me, I've highlighted those words, happiness, love, and understanding, in red, because I think this, again, really emphasizes the importance of these words. It's not just about feeding children or clothing children. It's about their well-being, their social, emotional, and physical development and well-being. But happiness, love, and understanding, when we ask children around the world what they want, particularly those who have been separated from family care, say these things are really, really important to them. But it also impresses upon states that they hold a primary responsibility to make sure that all civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights are upheld for children and their families, indeed, without discrimination of any kind. And it's the state's role to support families, to promote the resilience of children, their families, and their communities. And in terms of prevention of family separation, you'll see as we go through this morning why this support to families and promoting the resilience within the family and to build on existing coping mechanisms are really, really important. But in terms of those of you joining us today, the resolution also stresses the importance of international, regional, and bilateral multi-stakeholders partnerships and initiatives in also working with states and families to make sure that all the articles in the resolution are both recognised and realised. And we all know that in this position, NGOs play a very, very important role in working with and alongside states and governments in order to work with families and communities. So the UN resolution highlights the multiple and intersecting vulnerabilities of children that can lead to separation. And it's so important that we understand why children are being unnecessarily separated, or indeed may be separated for reasons of their own protection and best interests. But if we don't understand these reasons and we don't understand how we can address them, then we will fail to start to begin to prevent unnecessary separation. So the resolution recognises that children around the world are being separated for these particular reasons. That is one, which is all forms of violence. We know that poverty is an underlying reason, social exclusion and inequality, stigma, racism and discrimination. So for example, if maybe a child has a disability or a child comes from an ethnic minority, we know that children on the move who enter countries and come from a different ethnicity are being discriminated against. So we know that inclusion and equality will really, really help promote unity within families and communities. We know that armed conflict, as we're seeing in Ukraine, is a massive instrument of leading to family separation. And also something that we're going to be talking about in the final seminar of this series is the impact of climate change. So for example, drought, floods, and how that actually can lead to then stress, poverty, moving into internal displacement and migration. The UN resolution recognises that all children can be vulnerable to being separated from family care for many, many different reasons. But it particularly throughout the resolution highlights certain children, and that includes children belonging to ethnic, religious and linguistic minorities and Indigenous children, migrant, refugee and asylum seeking children, and those who are internally displaced and become separated from family, children with disabilities, and we know, and we will see later in my presentation, just how the fact that having a disability can be an incredible vulnerability to being taken away from parental care. Girls in particular are very vulnerable when we think about child marriage, forced marriage, and other protection concerns. Children who are in child-headed households, and children with HIV/AIDS and other serious illnesses. So again, I want to stress the resolution recognises all children may, for different reasons, become at serious risk of being separated from family care. But these children in particular are seen as having heightened risk. One thing I really want to stress is that the UN resolution particularly emphasises that financial and material poverty, or conditions directly and uniquely imputable to such poverty, that means connected to such poverty, should never be the only justification for removing a child from parental care, receiving a child into alternative care, and preventing his or reintegration. And we know that around the world, poverty is one of the major reasons different people are making a decision either to relinquish their own children into what they believe will be better care for them in alternative care, so where they will get access to food, to clothes, to what they believe is better education. And for those of us who joined us a few months ago, you will remember that we looked at how education is such a massive driver around the world of children losing parental care and being sent off to boarding schools because parents really believe, and social workers and other even teachers and governments really believe, that children will get a better upbringing if they are separated from their parents and sent to boarding schools. And we know from all the evidence that this is just not the case. They may get what is considered a better education, but they lose out in all other aspects of their lives. We also note that often people use this word orphanages, and orphanages are seen as a place to put children who maybe are also suffering from poverty. But we actually know that this is a misnomer, because it's estimated that approximately 95% of children who are in so-called orphanages are not orphans. They've been put there for other reasons, such as poverty. And we're really trying to get people worldwide to really stop using this term orphanages, because it really leads a lot of people around the world, including donors, to believe that these children are indeed true orphans, whereas we know that most of the children in so-called orphanages and other forms of alternative care have at least one, if not both, living parents, and they've been put there for other reasons, including poverty. So let's now look at the necessity principle. The necessity principle is something that's come out of the UN guidelines to alternative care of children. There are two principles within the UN guidelines. The necessity principle very clearly states that the removal of a child from parental or extended family care should only be done after there has been rigorous and systematic procedures, i.e. assessments, and these should be multi-sectoral assessments and very thorough assessments that determine whether separation from parental care is absolutely necessary and indeed in the best interest of the child. What that means, bottom line, is that child at risk of serious harm, or are there things that can be done to support that family and that child so that that child can in fact remain safely within their own family? And that such separation, if it is deemed necessary, should always be an act of last resort. Now, we're not going to talk about the suitability principle today, but just for those who may or may not be aware, the suitability principle is then about making sure that the most suitable alternative care setting is chosen for that child, and that means a high quality alternative care setting too. But today we're really going to concentrate on the necessity principle and gatekeeping actions that make sure children are not removed unnecessarily. So again, Research tells us that the vast majority of children in alternative care have at least one or two living parents. And it's believed that in many cases, in fact, overwhelmingly, we believe that children placed who have been placed in alternative care, that placement may have been avoidable if additional support could have been given to the child and family. And indeed, a study published by the European Commission in 2020 found that income poverty and other social stress factors remain a major reason for alternative care placements. And children from socially disadvantaged families are seriously overrepresented amongst those in residential care. The same study also found that stigma and discrimination results in children with disabilities, and particularly those with disabilities and ethnic minorities, are overrepresented in care in some countries. Now, this is not always the case, and that's why I've said some countries, because in fact, I've actually visited some countries where alternative care providers won't take children with disabilities into alternative care. Now, there's a big discussion going on globally about whether this is indeed the right way forward. But when a child is at risk of serious harm, there may be need to place a child with temporary disabilities into an alternative care placement. The study found that in Hungary, Bulgaria, and Romania, indeed 60% of all children in institutions were of Roma origin, whilst the Roma population as a whole only represented 10% of the total population. And at the end of 2014, of all of those children in alternative care in Germany, 14% of children were those with disabilities, whilst in Romania, it was 30% of all children in alternative care with children with disabilities. Whilst as an average, across the whole of Europe, there are only 6% of all children in Europe who have a disability. So we can see that in some countries, there is really this disproportion of children from ethnic minorities and disabilities in particular, who are being placed in alternative care settings. So why is it so important that we address this situation and prevent unnecessary separation? Well, we have to understand that research showed us that care experienced young people are one of the most vulnerable groups in society. They may suffer from stigma, discrimination, instability, fear, and loneliness. We know that they're highly disadvantaged in comparison to their peers in their societies, and they're more likely to experience worse mental health and physical well-being and have much higher rates of early death. They have poor education qualifications, higher levels of unemployment, higher levels of financial and material poverty. Many become homeless. Amongst this cohort, there is a higher rate of teenage pregnancy, increased involvement in or exposure to criminal activity. And indeed, we know that there are quite a lot of children and young people who have left care who actually commit suicide. So if we're going to address this situation, and we're going to hear a lot more about that from our other speakers this morning, what is it exactly that we need to address? What do you need to think about in order to combat such unnecessary situations? And what is it that's putting families at risk? So we know that there can be a combination of risk factors, and these can be consequences of wider social, cultural, economic, and physical environments in which they live. And these are the things we have to think about when we are addressing unnecessary separation. And we also have to recognize that this then can manifest itself on internal family dynamics and circumstances, including physical and mental ill health of caregivers or children, possibly the death of a caregiver, disability, remarriage, domestic violence, substance abuse, and there are lots of other reasons that can put families at risk of losing their child or children. So this is then compounded by lack of appropriate services. And this is what we need to look at in great detail. And again, this is what you'll hear more about this morning. We need to look at our services such as social security, inclusive education, access to health systems, adequate infrastructure, and that particularly means things like adequate housing, and supportive social networks. And they might be formal, but they might also be informal. The community can play a very, very important role in making sure that they build a protective and caring environment around the child, and that includes supporting families when they're facing difficulties. So let's think about some actions now. Well, we've just looked at what causes family separation, and now we need to think about an approach. So there was a very famous scientist and philosopher called Yuri Bronfenbrenner, and he has developed something called the ecosystems approach. And what that means is, and this is just one of many different graphics that you will find on the internet on how to explain his approach. And some of the graphics are very, very complex, showing the different ecosystems. And this one I've had designed to make it look much easier. But what it means is we must always place the child at the center of all our approaches, all our services, and all our responses to supporting families. And then we need to look at everything that impacts around the child. And those are immediate impacts, the immediate effect of what's happening within the family and the household, but then further out in the community, friends, neighbors, and then looking at the wider local environment. And also formal services and formal networks. Again, as you said, economy, health services, transport, employment, how local government operates, public spaces and places where children can be kept safe. And then we look at the broader economic policy and the social and wider environment. And we look at national and international policies. We look at things like climate change. We look at national and global economies. We look at demographic changes and all of those things that can impact and finally get down to the fact that a family becomes vulnerable. And when we're thinking about actions, we start here. We start understanding exactly what we have to address if we want to develop very, very efficient and effective responses to working with families and children and making sure we are doing exactly what is needed to prevent family separation. Now, I'm hoping this is going to play, and please let me know if it doesn't. This is a short video. It's actually from SOS Children's Villages, and it gives you a short introduction to some of the work they're doing around the world on family strengthening and how they actually look at supporting families when families become vulnerable and communities become vulnerable, in order to make sure that children need not leave their families unnecessarily. And I hope this is going to play. And if not, please can somebody speak up, because I can't see everybody in the room, and let me know. And let me know if you can hear the volume.
The video is playing, but there's no sound.
Okay, so I can hear the sound, and I have, when I was sharing, I did say play sound, but I'm just going to close, I'm just going to stop sharing, sorry, and share again. Share sound.
Them from
Yes.
giving proper care. This can lead to children being harmed or separated from their families.
Yes.
SOS Children's Villages offers tailored support to strengthen families in need, helping them to prevent the neglect and abandonment of their children. Parenting classes and psychological counselling give parents the skills to support their child's development, manage their household, and create a safe environment at home. Like a father who was struggling to raise his son by himself. After a tough time followed by separation, he received support through parenting workshops and counselling. This helped them stay together. Financial difficulties put extra pressure on families. SOS Children's Villages works with partners to empower parents with the skills they need to find employment or start their own business. Abeba expanded her spices business and can now raise her granddaughter. With his pushcart shop, Mohammed earns enough to send his children to school. And Lynn's family can secure their basic needs by raising livestock. With strong families, whole communities prosper. When parents struggle, they get the support they need to overcome their difficulties. Because when a child or a young person is cared for and supported, they can thrive.
Great. So that's just a very short introduction to some of the things that might happen within the Family Strengthening Programme, and you're going to find more out about some of those programmes later this morning. One of the things that we also need to look at is the different levels of prevention that might happen. So this is a very famous triangle, a pyramid that I think you may have seen before, and it looks at primary, secondary and tertiary levels of prevention. So primary or universal levels of prevention are programs that are for the whole population and to provide support before a problem occurs within a family. So this might be things such as free education, universal healthcare for all, family allowances, disability payments, unemployment benefits, access to pensions, making sure there is social housing for those who need it, and daycare so that members of the family can go out for work. And these are just a very, very few ideas. There should be services that are available to everyone in the community. Secondary level services are those that are targeted at families, particularly in need when there are some identified problems already. And this is to prevent escalation of those challenges and difficulties. So that might be specific parenting programs, things like child development, positive parent-to-child relationships, or child rights. It might be family mediation when the relationships within a family are broken down. It could be substance abuse treatment or psychosocial support. It could be additional community-based services for children with disabilities if a family is specifically struggling. It could be additional access to employment, income generation schemes, and it could be additional targeted social welfare allowances. And again, those are just a few ideas of some of the secondary prevention services that might be, that should be made available. And then at tertiary level, we are looking at children who are really at high risk, or indeed may have already been separated from families, and work that needs to be done within the family before the child is able to return. And this is specifically packages of tailored support to the family, including those that may also be under level 2. And as I said, specific services that might prepare children to return to their families, including counselling and mentoring if they've already been removed from family care. So as I say, these are the quite famous pyramid that shows the 3 levels of prevention that we might work with. And again, I really want to stress the issue of making sure poverty is not a reason itself for separation. And I'm afraid that I have encountered many social service systems that have this intrinsic belief that a poor parent is a bad parent. And we know that there are millions of children growing up in poor families where they are very well cared for, where they are loved, but the parents may just be struggling with other issues. And so in order to address some of those issues we've been talking about, particularly in the Bronfenbrenner ecosystems ecological framework, it's very important that your programs to prevent family separation look at fulfilling the human rights of all the family members. It's not just one member of the family, we need to work with the family as a whole. We need to work with societies at an international, national and local level to combat racism and discrimination, to address structural poverty, to look at all of those things we just saw on the pyramid, which includes quality education. I'm just repeating this because these are really important. Health services, economic resources, livelihoods, and social security. And as an example of those, again, I'm just going to play this short video. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and just make sure that, yeah, I'm going to share my sound. And again, this is a little bit of a longer video that again looks into some more detail of family strengthening programs and addressing some of those issues that we've just been looking at. Can you hear the sound?
Yes.
Abide Family Center, we're a family preservation organization. We work towards keeping children in families rather than in institutions. The major important thing is empowering these families, because these are the families that are at a risk of placing their children in institutions. So once they are referred to us, we try to talk to them, encourage them, and show them the usefulness of a child growing up in a family. I started working at Abide in 2013, and I was hired as the income generation director. And by that time, the purpose was to develop a business curriculum, which we would use when teaching business classes. At the end of it all, we empower them, we give them money to start up small businesses where they can work, earn income, and look after their children.
Embeera yange yali mbiino, nafiirwa omusaada nga ndina abaana abo abalongo ba bebi. Wefiirwa omusaada, bizinesi yona yona yali agiire nayo, landiroodi yatuuka n'okuminga mu nnumba yankuba. Munange abaana okusoma ng'ezira.
Kind of clients we receive here, these are the parents who are at a risk of placing their children into orphanages. So when they are referred to us, we try to ask them, why are you doing this? These are your children. They keep on telling us that we are poor, we can't afford paying fees for our children, we can't feed them, we can't provide the basic needs. Why don't we give up our children to where we believe they can get better education, they can be fed, they can get the medical attention needed? So that's when we come in and counsel them. We show them the usefulness of a child growing up with a parent other than in an institution. We try to tell them that if you cooperate with us, we are ready to work with you, support you economically, and then be able to look after your children. Once we tell them that we are ready to work with you, they welcome it. Our Abide's program really complement each other. Like, we have the social work team, we have the business team, the nurse, and then the parenting instructor. So once such a family is being referred to us, either through the probation officer or the local orphanages and babies' home, the social workers immediately start off by doing an assessment on them. So they go out to the field to assess such a family and really get to find out the vulnerability of that family. And once we come to vote for such a case and we are like, yes, it's really fit for us, such a client is admitted into the program. So they start with a business class whereby they go to get to know, to get the business skills required to run a business. And in there they get to know how to plan for their businesses, how they can reduce the costs, how they can maximize profits, how they can prevent losses in their business. And also bookkeeping is also very important, as well as how to grow their businesses. It takes 1 month. Once they graduate, that's when the business instructors go out with them to do the shopping for their business. We don't give them cash to buy their products. So business instructors go out with them and buy the stuff they need to run in their businesses. So after that is done, they're now on their own. They start working until we have the parenting classes. In this, they get to know how to keep their kids home, how to appreciate a child, how to not use bad words towards a child. As well, they get to know the rights of their children, and also are taught the benefit of a child growing up in a family. 3, we have the nurse who does the hygiene and health class. She gets to educate them on sanitation, malnutrition, how to prevent it, what they can feed their children so that they are not malnourished. In the beginning, that was around 2014, we used to get families that had nowhere to stay. Like they've been kicked out of the house because the husband ran away and he was the person paying rent. So we chose to put up an emergency housing whereby we would bring in such families to stay there as we work with them. In the beginning, we would leave them to stay into emergency housing for a period of like 3 to 4 months. And then they would join the class, graduate and start business. Still, we would pay for the rent for the first 3 months. It was all on us. So we came to realize that such clients would not put in the much effort we would need for them to work hard, simply because while they were still at Abide, they always depended on us to buy everything for them. So now when they're out there, they're kind of reluctant. They will not put in the effort required. And like after 1 month, they would call, my business has collapsed. I need food, because we used to provide food, but everything was provided to them. So we learned that the longer they stayed into emergency housing, the more dependent they became. So now we revised that. So once we put a client into emergency housing, we keep them for a few months, 1 month or 6 weeks, and then they move out. For these ones, they are really working hard and they are thriving well.
Bizinesi yange ntunda muwogo n'amatooke era nze gw'obona buti saano neeyongera ku eriina mala neyo tali akazi mingi kuba nzira gwe ntakola ebyokugula biriyo bingi kale bw'oba olina kaashi ng'awerako era oleeta eno wookoma okuba n'essente wookoma okufuna amagoba. N'ensonga lwaki bino byonna ndibifuna n'okulabirira abaana biba biri kuntambulira bulungi kubanga buti ndina ekyo ekibiina kye ndi kusuula eky'omwaka ndikwenda agula polota tyame n'abaana bange bonabona 6.
Given the experience working at Abide for the past 3.5 years, I've come to realize that the amount of the grant given out really is not what we would give to all families, because some families have bigger number of dependents compared to other families. So I would think it would be better if we would revise that and look into the number of dependents in such a family and then the amount that would be given to such a family. A family of 1 to 3 children, I think, or 3 dependents would receive the amount that we give as of now. But from 4+ and above would give a different amount because the demands of the other family are much bigger compared to the demands of this other family. Initially, when they just come here, they come when they are very desperate, very worried. But when they go through our business training and the counseling and the support given to them, you see that they get to improve. And when you're out there in the field doing your own business and you're learning to our client, he or she can come to you with a big smile. Our work bears fruits. Because every family that we've worked with, they are keeping their children home. None of them has ever surrendered their children into an institution. So I love that, and that keeps us motivated and pushing on because we really believe what we're doing is impacting the community.
So I particularly like that video because it actually shows a holistic approach. And if we think about all the things that I listed in my previous slide to that video, you know, it looks at all the different multi-aspects. It's not just one thing that might impact a family, or even one thing like, you know, losing your house or losing your job or losing the main breadwinner in the family can lead to many, many, many other aspects that then leads to families either surrendering their children themselves or having their children taken away from them. So again, what's really important there is you'll see from that video, decisions are being made on a case-by-case basis, but by a multidisciplinary team. They have different people within their organization, not just a business advisor, not just social workers. One thing, to go back to the UN resolution, again stresses that any decisions to remove a child should be made not just by a multidisciplinary team, but through a judicial, administrative or other adequate recognised procedures. And there should be legal safeguards in place to make sure that somebody doesn't just walk into a family and say, yeah, I think it's a good idea to give up your child. Or somebody standing at the gate of an alternative care facility doesn't just say, yes, I'll take your child just because you're poor. That there has to be procedures put in place by the state to make sure that those children are protected from such decisions. And also, I just want to stress this last part, that there should be meaningful participation in decisions about children being removed. And most particularly, children should be involved in that decision themselves. So one of the things we need to do is to build a capable multi-sectoral workforce. Again, just to stress that this is not just one issue that may be impacting on a family, it's many, and therefore it needs a multi-sectoral response. And all professionals need to be competent and well-trained to understand, recognise and support families when they are maybe at risk of losing children and children going into alternative care. And I've put at the bottom here, you'll see economists, because as we've seen, all the issues that relate to poverty and lack of access to services and support can be due to economic policies within a government. And also put the private sector, because they also have a role to play and they're very, very often forgotten. They are employees, they can support communities. So we have to not just think about the state and non-governmental organisations, but we also need to think about the private sector and the role they might play as well. And as you see in that last video, they actually have people in their programs who are moving into the economic sector and becoming their own small private business owners. And other private sector businesses who are successful in the community could play a role in that. So just to recap, who is responsible for preventing family separation under the UN resolution? Well, we all are. Families themselves, as we saw, a family has the primary responsibility for caring for children and making sure they are brought up in a loving, caring and safe environment. That includes the extended family. Communities. The state, of course, has a major role, but so do other UN bodies, donors in particular, and we've talked a lot in these seminars about the role that donors can play in perpetuating alternative care, and particularly the role of institutional care, whereas that money could be going into family strengthening and prevention of separation. We as national and international NGOs and community-based organisations, including faith-based organisations, and again, private enterprises. So just to remind ourselves as I finish, children should not be accepted into our alternative care programs unless there's been rigorous multi-sectoral participatory assessments to determine the necessity of such removal, and that every decision should be made in the best interest of the child, and separation should only be if there are real risk of harm to the child. But everything else we should do our best to address within the family and the community. And as I say, children are not accepted into our programs if they are safe living with their family. And provision of universal and targeted support services could indeed prevent unnecessary separation. So thank you very much indeed for listening to my presentation this morning. I hope it's been helpful and interesting. But now I'd like to introduce you to one of our really important speakers, and that is Boniface. And as I said before, I'm not going to say a lot about Boniface, because he's going to tell us more about himself, but I'm delighted that he's joined us this morning. I know he's going to tell us a little bit about himself, his life, and his current work with an organisation called Positive Life in Kenya. He has been a teacher in a school in the slums, and now he's taking up an incredibly important role as a child mentor working with street children. So Boniface, thank you so much for being with us today. And now you're going to share some really important information with us about yourself, but most importantly as well, the work that you're currently doing to support children and their families, both to help them with reunification if they've already left their families, but also working with families to help prevent the separation in the first instance. So over to you. Thank you very much, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Hi everyone. I'm Boniface. I'm from Kenya. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Someone said I'm from Ghana. I'm from Kenya. Yeah. So I'm Boniface again. I do work with the Positive Life Kenya, and mostly my work, I work as a mentor. What do? I mentor families. I mentor children. I'm also advocating the street work, especially in Kenya, especially also in slums. So I want to talk to you about my history. It's a little one. I was born in a very poor family where we lacked necessities like basic needs when I was still very young. When I was 2 years, my father died. Later on, my mother followed. It was a devastating moment for me since I was so young. Even before they died, I never knew what happened. I just found myself, people crying, people were loitering around, shouting. Later on, I was forced to go to my aunt because she was the only closest family at that time. But since also the aunt had a lot of children, like 6 of them, the husband never liked me. So she drove me away from the family. When I was 4 years, where I had to go, I had to run into the street when I was 4 years. Life in the street was bearable. We had no water to drink. We had no shelters to stay. We had nowhere to sleep. We had even no food. What we did mostly, and we were many children, I was not only alone, we were so many. What we used to do, we used to borrow from the well-wishers. Others called us name. In Swahili, the name is called chokora. Chokora means a very abusive language in Kenya. It's like you are being rejected by other people. And even at night, we never slept because at 4, just think when you are at 4, how life it is, how you are living on the streets, how you are living on the corridors of the big towns. Just think about it. Sicknesses and other things became part of us. We were fed by well-wishers in the streets who tried to gather themselves to feed us. And that's how one organization saw us. It was a Catholic organization and decided to take us in. In the street, we are so malnourished, as Chris said also. This leads to people even tend to shy away from themselves. They think that life has ended for them. They think that nowhere they can run to. They think that now I'm all over because I'm alone. So we were taken in the orphanage. And when we were around 4 years, we were so many, were around 30 children, around 4 to 8 years. Many ran away because they were not used to orphanage life. Because in orphanage, you have to follow rules. That was the first one. Second, because you are used to drinking, sniffing glue, taking other sources of drugs. So now in orphanage, you're not used to taking them. So what do? You need to run away so that you can also get used to them. We suffered a lot in the orphanage because, first of all, there were the life there, people, the staffs and us, they were not equal. We were called names because we were from the streets. Remember, not everyone in the staff liked us, and we were called that name. I told you, Chokora. It was so abusive. I never liked that name. Until now, it's still affecting me. The second thing, even if we got education, but there was something that we lacked. We lacked love. We lacked that attachment between the family and us. Even if we got food, even if we got everything, but there was that most thing which we lacked. The love of being called a family. The love of being into a specific family. That one we lacked. Of course, in the orphanages, there's everything. We're given everything. But there's difference between orphanage and family. Because in the family, even if you lack today, your father or your mother will tell you, oh, you know, we lack because of this one. Now, you'll get used to it. Also in the orphanages, very early in the morning, you wake up in the morning, you deal with very cold water. You deal with things that may make you unsafe, maybe cold. Especially me, I end up contracting diseases that is affecting me up to now. Every time I cry, because I know if I can remember back in my years back, I normally cry because I got asthma, which is affecting me up to now. Whenever the weather changes, for example, here in Kenya, it's wet, it's cold weather. Now I need to wear a lot of clothes so that I can keep my body safe, keep my body warm, keep my body from any cold that may harm me. I contracted the asthma disease when I was in the orphanage. Now, other people are exposed to stress. You know how stress is harmful to one's personal life. It causes mental, it causes also physical stress to our lives because we are being beaten up. Whenever you do something small, you are being given beatings that you'll never forget. So it brought harm to our physical appearances. We were disturbed mentally. We were disturbed anywhere we stayed. You felt like you are lonely. It's like you are rejected. It's like you are abandoned. It's like you are rejected by everyone in society. It's because we lacked the thing called family. We followed rules that kept us denied. We were denied the attachment or contacting with our parents back at home because there was no that attachment. You could not even contact your family because there was not that mode. No teacher or no staff could allow us to talk with the family and tell them how we were going through in the orphanages. Because you see, when you are in the orphanage, there's some things you need to follow. And if you talk to your parents that, oh, you are going through this, might be a problem to the orphanage. They might be taken to a court. So there was no that communication between the family and us people who are living in the orphanage. In that, I was still very young. Even my family, I never knew them. I came to know my family when I was around 16 years, when I was registering for my final examination. That way, I needed my family name so that I can register my examination. But unluckily, I never got even one. I lacked that love of the family. I lacked exposure of the family. I lacked everything in my family. That's why even it's affecting me up to now because of the risks I passed when I was in the orphanage. Isolation rooms were used also. It was sought of punishment. When you did something, maybe, let me give an example. When you urinate on the bed, we were isolated from the rest of the children. Like how you're being isolated and given a room where you'll stay there for like 2 days. You are only given one meal, and that's lunch. So breakfast and supper, we were denied. That one tortured our mind. It's like we were suffering, yet we called this place home. That one was a very big thing that made us even to live with the stress up to now. Okay, when you are in the orphanage, when we were in the orphanages, there was that thing that we called ourselves to be special. Special in what way? There's some things that we were given in the orphanages, and there's some things that you think other children does not have. So you call yourself special. That one, the dynamics of mingling with other people, socializing with other people became very low. So we tend to think that, now in this world, we are only us. Nobody can tell us anything. But that one denied us chance to see the nature of life outside, denied us chance to see how people outside live. This one denied us chance to see how importance or how people live or how people go through in the other parts of the world or in the other parts of the setups of the family. We could not know our traditions. We could not know our setups in the family. That one was denied us every chance of doing things the way other people do. In the orphanages, life, there was no equality. People were not equal, meaning that we had other bigger boys who were ruling us, because when you enter in the orphanages, you are given someone. That someone acts as your ambassador. In what way? He will show you how you stay, how you live. That one person will make you a slave. Will make you a slave. In what way? He will give everything for you. And if you're like 5 years or 6 years, even washing your clothes is a problem. They cannot get that clean that much. So this person, they make you a slave. They force you to do things that you cannot do, especially drugs, which were being brought inside at night, maybe. So this person who is bigger boy to you, force you to take drugs, force you in case, instead of that you are trying to change your life in the orphanages, also there are some other abuses that you are being forced into doing, especially violent abuse. Drug, we are forced to take the drugs, and yet we are trying to run away from them. Even if we are brought there, even if we are trying to change our lives in there, but still this life you cannot change immediately, because there are other addicts, there are other violences in the orphanages. This made our life so miserable. Even now, if I remove my body, if I remove my clothes, you can see the marks, how I was beaten, how terrible my body looks like when I remove my clothes. In the institution also, you are forced to do things which maybe you don't like, because you don't go to a certain church, and maybe the staff tells you you have to do this and this and this and this. You need to adhere to, because if you don't do that, you'll be beaten hardly. Not like in a home. In homes, your parents or someone alternative care or your guardian will tell you, hey, my child, do anything that you want. But he or she will guide you in which way you will go. Here, you are being forced to do things the way you want them to do. You cannot even reject, say, this is what I can do. They'll tell you, no, you need to do this and this and that, because those are the rules that you need to follow. So in the organizations, there are some rules that you need to follow. Other violences, for example, the bigger boys molested us homosexually. They did sexual to us because we were still young. How I can remember there's one child who cried a lot. Even now, he has never healed. He had that mental disorder up to now. Just recently, he died. Because of what? Because of the mental, because of the torture he went through when he was in the orphanage. And that one was a very big thing. And it became a problem to his life up to now. Even these people, when they go out, especially me, even trying to find a family, even trying to find somewhere to lay your foundation from, it's a problem. Why? Because you are used to a certain life in the orphanages. How? When you wake up in the morning, you'll get breakfast. After breakfast, you'll get lunch. After lunch, you'll get supper, and there's some activities. But when you're outside here, you don't get those things. You need to struggle with your life because you are used to those kind of life. What do? You'll engage yourself into disasters. For example, engaging yourself into gangsters. I can remember there are so many, like 10 of them, whom I stayed with in the orphanages. They died just recently. One was killed. He was found with a gun. He was killed. Others were robbers. Immediately, they were killed. Also, we had girls whom we were living with, but in other orphanages. These girls were complaining of sexual harassment. They were being harassed. Why? Because if they wanted any favors from the staffs, what was the repercussion of that? They could be, they want these staffs to sleep with them so that they can get what they wanted. So that brings about psychosocial, social torture, and you'll never heal away from that. Healing is a problem. Up to now, we cannot heal because there's some things we passed in the orphanages. Up to now, it has become a problem to us. There's none of trust attachment. There's no attachment between our families and us. Up to even now, we cannot attach ourselves with the family. Why? Because we never knew them. Now we think maybe they never loved us. They never cared for us. Why? We used to orphanage institutions life. We used to institutions setups. We were used to things in the institutions. Even now, trying to set our lives in the family is a problem. There's no attachment. There's no happiness. There's no love because we lacked that love. Ever since I got out of the orphanages, I lacked that love. I lacked that happiness. Even if I'm trying to recover, there's some things when I stay alone, I just feel lonely. Even I cry because I haven't healed up to now. That's what affects us, most of the people who live in the orphanage. Also, quality of life. I mean, quality in what way? In what way? You see, there's some things that you can get at home, and there's some things that you cannot get in the orphanages. Even if you are given everything, but there are specific things that you cannot get while in the orphanage. The first thing is there's that thing called love. Love is very paramount. Love is very special to people who are living in the family. Even if you do something small, you're being called, this is my child. There's that quote which is being said, my child, is very important. Second thing that we lacked in the orphanages is that thing called happiness. There was no happiness because we are used to abuses. You are used to strict rules. You are used to things that will torture your mind up to now. There was no happiness at all. There was no happiness at all. The other thing is freedom. At home, sometimes maybe you can do two or three things. At least you feel now you have freedom. In the orphanages, there were no freedom. We're being battered as if we are not taken care of. Especially when you had a very small disability, you could not. There was less attention. There was very less attention for us because you have disability. Even if okay, there are some children who are active and others are less active. If you are less active, you are given very low attention, and that will bring to just psychologically torture. You'll say that you are being rejected. You'll say that nobody is listening to you. So that's where the problems were. And even to now, I know these children suffer a lot. Trying to attach themselves with the families outside here, that one is a very big agenda for them. Now I want to talk the work that I'm doing, that how I mentor these children. First of all, the first thing that I do is I journey with these children, because journeying with them, you'll understand their problems. You'll understand how they ran away from home. You'll understand what is the big thing that this child fears to go back home. That's journeying with them, walking with them around. And that one needs time. You cannot do that thing with 1 week or 2 months. It needs time, a lot of time. The second thing that I do is I try to teach them the importance of life, the importance of family, the importance of how people living in the family or the freedoms these people are going through, rather than being in the streets, rather than being called names, rather than being rejected by other people, rather than being beaten. We have policemen who hate. In Kenya, street children are prohibited, but they are there. They are being beaten. They are being brutally laughed at, or being each and every day. They cannot stay in peace because there's nobody who loves them. So in that time of teaching them, I will show them love and try to understand their problems and try to teach them different things. I will associate them with activities that will make at least some of their problems, some of what they're going through, at least to come down, or at least to lower. The second thing that I do, after I have journeyed with this time, after I have taught them, at least I secure a place for them, especially when they have accepted their life, when they have accepted whom they are, when they have accepted that, oh, we can change, as we can change. Because if they have stayed there in the street for a long time, changing is a big problem. So what do? We secure a place. What is a secure place? We take them to a rehabilitation center. In the rehabilitation center, we only put them there for 6 months. Why do we do that? At least to change. Because these people, they're used to sniffing glue, they're used to other drugs, they have been addicted with other drugs. So we secure a place for them at least to change their life, at least to make the drugs calm down a little. In that way, we also work with the staffs in the rehabilitation center to try to trace their family so that we can place them in their correct family. If they don't have a family, we try to find an alternative care where we can place them. Then, of course, when I'm in the street, I try to share with them very little that I have, because sharing is also caring. When you care for these people, they will feel they are loved. They will feel at least this person loves us. They will see the importance of love in themselves. They will see how important maybe you're trying to promote to them. They will see how, even we are there, you teach them about family. They will see how important the family is, and they will accept it, because living alone, trying to be alone is not an easy thing. So you try to share with them wherever little thing that you have. So I'm also wanting to talk about the strengthening family that we do as an organization of Positive Life Kenya. The first thing that we do is we do home visits of the families that we work with. In that home visits, that's where you'll recognize other problems in the family. Sorry. After recognizing the problems in in the family, you will share with the rest of the staffs and how you can help these families, at least to strengthen themselves, at least to reduce this risk of these children going back to the street. After that, now you give them the guidance and counseling. We have different types of guidance and counseling that we do. We have parental guidance that we do, and we have businesses that we guide these people. Especially, we start a very small businesses promotion. That is giving them small amount so that they can start their businesses, so that they can strengthen themselves, so at least they can put food on the table. That's why now we are advocating for that thing, at least now starting as small businesses so that we can move on properly. That will be reducing these children from going back to the street, reducing the harm on the street, on the children, trying to put at least things on the right track. The other thing is try to show them love, because not every family has a father, not every family has a mother, especially the families that is child-headed family. Remember, they are the people who are leading the family. So you try to show them true love by talking to them, sharing with them, laughing with them, visiting them frequently. When you visit them frequently, they feel that they are loved. Remember, in the communities that we are in, others are being rejected, others are called names, others are being left alone, others are abandoned. So what do? We show them love and we visit them frequently. So on the closing remarks, now I want to close. On the closing remarks, I would like to say this. It's better, it's very important, and it's something which is good, at least to put a child in his or her own family. Even if they don't have a family, it is very, very important to put that child to a specific family. When I was still very young, for example, when I could have been put into a specific family, at least my life could have changed. At least I could be right now I have a place to call home. At least I could be I could have saying, now I felt love. Even if I lack some basic needs, at least I could say I'm feeling happy. At least I have somewhere I could call home. Thank you.
So now I have great delight in introducing our next speaker. This is Justin Lungu. Justin is joining us from the Eastern South African Regional Office of SOS Children's Villages International. And he has a really significant role, not just in SOS, but for this discussion this morning. And that is, he is the Regional Family Strengthening Programme Advisor for Eastern and Southern Africa, for SOS. He has got numerous experience, 20 years working with SOS, before that the Zambia Red Cross Street Kids Project, and he's held many different very, very important roles within the SOS Regional Office in terms of family strengthening programs, institutional partnership development advisor, regional management support advisor. And in 2020, Justin was appointed to his current role, which, as I said, is the Regional Family Strengthening Programme Advisor. And he supports a total of 26 countries and the family strengthening programs in those countries, which is a huge role. And I know that means he's bringing a lot of really, really vital and essential information to this meeting today. This involves him having a key role in driving forward the family strengthening programme strategy and giving technical support also to those 26 countries in delivering that strategy. Justin, we're absolutely delighted to have you with us today and to hear about this program. And I know I've seen your PowerPoint already, and I know you're going to give us lots of really, really in-depth and interesting and useful information. So thank you very much, Justin, and over to you.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Chrisse. It's my pleasure to interact with this group. I'm particularly delighted that I'm talking to my fellow social workers, because that's where I started from as a social worker. And I think talking to you, then we'll be speaking the same language. And I think you can also maybe upgrade my software of social work. It could have been run rust because of being too much in the field. As Dr. said, I'm currently the Family Strengthening Program advisor, and the 26 countries comprise countries in Southern Africa, countries in East Africa, and we have 2 countries from West Africa. So allow me to project my presentation. I hope you can see it. Let me know.
Yes.
Let me know if you are able to see it.
It's
Confirm.
fine.
Okay. So I just give you a picture of where we are currently operating as the SOS. So we have also in the Oceanic, we have Madagascar and Mauritius. In the West Africa, we have Ghana and Nigeria. So when you look at the whole geographical display, you discover that actually we are dealing with both the Islamic countries and the Christian countries. We are also dealing with different cultural perspectives. So when we are talking about prevention of child abandonment, we are also looking at this diversity in terms of religion, in terms of cultural. That there is a shift from one region to another, and what causes child abandonment might differ from country to country, from region to region. So what guides us in terms of our intervention, it's in what we normally do from the very beginning, the country child rights situation analysis. That's what informs us exactly what are the causes of child abandonment. And the programs are tailored based on these findings. So generally, in SOS, we have 2 categories of our beneficiaries, whom we normally call program participants to avoid the word beneficiaries. We have children who have already lost parental care. These are the ones that nothing could have prevented the situation from landing them into institutional care or any other forms of care. So these have already lost parental care, and these are the ones that normally end up in our various alternative care options. For instance, we are normally known for having the family houses within the villages. But we have a second group where almost 75% of our beneficiaries are coming from, which is those that are at risk of losing parental care. These are the ones that, if nothing happens, then we are likely to have these children end up in the category of those that have lost parental care. So the Family Strengthening Program is dealing with the children that are at risk of losing parental care. These are vulnerable children. There are some that we take on the board on our programs, but normally you might not take everyone because of the magnitude of the problem. So we still reach those that are not directly on our programs in one way or another. We are also targeting those caregivers and their families where these children are coming from. We are also targeting the communities where these children are coming from. But at the end of the day, we remember that these children, their main duty bearer is the government. So we also target these government institutions to see why are they not reacting to the situation of the children that they're having. So those also become our targets in terms of strengthening them in order to support the families, to support the children, so that they don't end up in the category of those children that are at risk of parental cares. So now when you look at the typology of our beneficiaries, from a social perspective, you know, we have 4 categories of our beneficiaries that we have. You have those that are willing and able. These are people that if you want to support them to be strengthened, the families, the caregivers, the children, when you say we have this that we can give you in order to be self-reliant, in order to get you rid of it, these they have, for instance, their physical okay, their health is okay, but they are also willing. Then you have some that despite being able to be engaged in these empowerment interventions, but they don't want to be involved. They just want to receive. You know, they have a dependence syndrome. This is another category, unwilling, but unable. But you have also some that are very much willing, but they are unable. I mean, you have people that are so much aged that you can't even say, okay, we are doing small businesses. They are beyond that stage that they can do anything. But the spirit is there. They really want to do something. Then you have those that are unwilling and unable. Their physical or any other factors do not make them get involved in anything, but they also don't want, they just want to receive. They have this dependence syndrome. So normally we have these 4 categories of the beneficiaries. Normally when the children are we're looking at, then we're saying, how is this family? Is it willing and able? Is it unwilling and unable? Is it willing or unable, and it's unwilling or unable? Now, you remember that our family strengthening program support is time limited because our funding is normally coming, you know, for 3 to 5 years. So we really have to ensure that actually we build the capacity of the families, of the communities, and of the institutions around to sustain that which we have started. So we invest our resources in the families that are willing and able, in the communities that are willing and able, in the institutions that are willing and able. For those that are unwilling and able, but they are able, then we bring in other interventions. Normally, this has a lot to do with attitude. So this is where our social workers engage them to try to transform them, to try to change their mindset. And once their mindset has changed, then they are moved into other category now, which is the willing and able. Then we start investing in them. Then those that are willing and unable, these are the ones now that force us to work with the communities and other institutions, government institutions, to see how we can strengthen the community structures, the government institutions, so that they are able to take care of such people, so that even when the program comes to an end, these people are able to be catered for. For those that are unwilling and unable, similarly, these, because of their, I think there's much that we can do, but sometimes within the project period, you might find that you are unable, but we still engage the communities and the government institutions to continue working on them and to see how best they can provide. So those are the 4 categories of the program participants, beneficiaries that we normally deal with in the family strengthening program when we're dealing with child protection. So our main, where we invest our resources, much of our time is those that are willing and able. That's the category where we invest the resources and our time and our skills. Now, what is it that we want to achieve in the family strengthening programs? Essentially, there are 2. One, for us to say that the program is really succeeding. One is that the families are becoming self-reliant and are exiting the program. So here we want to see the caregiver who is able to provide for his or her children, for his or her siblings, That's what we're looking for. So once we intervene in the caregiver in that family households, with time we want to see, for instance, how many children in this family now are being sponsored by their caregiver. The family is able to do it. Previously, we would have supported these children into school by scholarship, but later on, we want the caregiver to take over. Then secondly, we might look at the level of income. How has the income increased? How is their livelihood? Is it diversified? If today something is to happen, are they able to come on board and take care of it? So we look at those things. Those are some of the things. The second measure for us is the number of communities that are able to implement the programs that we have initiated. And they are able to say, now SOS, you have become relevant. We can continue on our own. For instance, if we started with only 100 children, then the community, through being capacitated, it's able to now reach more than what the program had started. So we'll look at the level of community-driven interventions. We'll look at the number of service institutions rendering services adequately to the children, to the families, to the vulnerable category within that community. But we'll also look at the strong child protection mechanism that is leading to low child protection issues. So these are the two major areas that we look at in terms of. So when we are looking at the area of prevention of child abandonment, we normally focus on 4 outcome areas. One, we want at the very beginning, because a child loses the family, loses being in its biological family, or in its being in its original community, because the community is not able to respond. So we want to empower communities so that they are able to support families, they are able to respond to the community challenges, those issues that the child rights, the community child rights association is bringing out. The second area, we want to see that the families are empowered to self-reliance. Then the third one, because when these two are not working, the community is poor, the family is poor, we normally look at the government. Where was the government? What is happening? Where are these institutions that are supposed to be rendering services? What are the social safety net programs that are there? Are they adequate? Are they really targeting the right people? So we start dealing with the issue of advocacy. That's another area that we're looking at. Then in the end, the fourth one is we look at the child development. We want each child and young person to realize their rights and meet their individual needs. So these are the 4 outcome areas within our family program strengthening across Southern, Eastern, and West Africa. Then in terms of I always explain this in the African perspective, especially I'll give an example where I grew up in the communities. I'm not a town boy. I'm a boy who came from the village and moved into the town. I always say that actually, you know, our poverty in Africa is much a characteristic of the community. You know, a child can survive, cannot lose the ties of his family if he's empowered. I couldn't lose, because when I got my education, when I was empowered, I still remained in the family because individually I was strengthened. So there are times when a youth, a young person, a child is empowered, is able to stand on his own and can stay in the family. Now, there is another issue. When the child is poor, he relies on the immediate family. It's the family that supports the child. And if the family is not able to provide, then the family will look at the community. I always say in the African sense that actually, most of the times you might have tea, not because your family had sugar, they had the tea, no, because your neighbor had it. So normally what you eat in your household is normally shared to your neighbor, is normally shared to the other person. If I buy a loaf of bread, you will find that I still remember that today I see it, that actually you will find that half of it you are eating the family, then your parents will be telling you, can you take this and go and give your neighbor, go and give your friend. So you will find that actually you are catered by virtue of the community resources that I have. So these are the 3 lines of resilience that we want to strengthen in the family strengthening programs in order to prevent child abandonment. So whatever we're talking about, we want to build the child, the young person resiliency. We want to build the family resilience. We want to build the community resilience. And we advocate in order for the government to strengthen these 3 lines of resilience. Now, we have our own approach. The first approach for us, whatever we start with the community. We do not go straight into the family. So the community informs us of the situation of the child, because the child is as poor as the community normally. It's rare that you find that actually the child is very poor, but the community is poor. In the African scenario, rarely does it happen like that. So you will see that the child development is being supported by the community, by the family, and the family relies on the community. And this is what I was explaining in it. So we talk about child development being an outcome of family empowerment, and family empowerment being an offshoot of community empowerment. And this is our approach. So we believe that we need to invest in those 3 lines: in child development, in family empowerment, and in community empowerment. So what is our major role here? We are looking at the community and the family empowerment. Our role as family strengthening programs is 1, capacity building, capacity development. And the second one is facilitation. Whatever we are doing, we ask ourselves, are we capacity building? Are we facilitating? We try by all means to move away from provisioning those interventions that don't build the capacity of the community and the family. Then we believe that community empowerment, family empowerment is something that we need to work hand in hand with the community-based partners. So we see the community-based partners as one. These are the people who advocate for those poor families, for those poor children. They have to be a focal point for any reliable reference in terms of support to the family. But we also see the community as a hub where the services should be provided. But we also see the community as a driver for all the interventions. So we build the community in order to be able to take the implementation roles of advocacy, of being a focal point for child services, for family support, of being a hub of services of information for the family and for the child, but also being the driver. So this is what we believe in. So our relationship in teams is a triangle. We work in a triangle relationship. We have the family strengthening program, we have the community-based partners, but we also work with the other civil society organization and government as our implementing partners. So to support a family, to prevent the child abandonment, we believe that it's these 3 pillars that should be engaged, that should work towards the prevention of the child abandonment, of supporting the child, of supporting the family. Now, as I said, our empowerment process of the community, we start with the community feasibility study and the community rights situation analysis. And that informs us what is lacking, what are the capacity gaps of this community to respond to the needs of the family and the child. With that, we come up with what we call the community capacity assessment. And that is talking about looking at different institutions of the community, different, who is in charge of what, why are they failing to do it? If it's education, why is education institutions not provide what it is? Maybe education is difficult because there are no schools. So that community capacity assessment information and the community rights situation analysis leads us into the development of the community capacity development plan. And the community development plan is the one that guides us in terms of what support we render to this community in the child prevention work. And from there, we come up with a partnership joint implementation framework between the community, the CSOs, the government, and the SOS. And thereafter, we have our FS program and community memorandum of understanding. So this is our community empowerment process. Now, normally when we are doing, as I said, we have our own, we want the community to contribute. We believe in the, you remember the ABCD approach, the asset-based community development. We believe that every community, every family, every individual has some assets that it can contribute towards the resolutions of the challenges that they have. So within the community empowerment capacity building assessment results, we look at what actions can we do that will build their reliance, that will make them rely on their own as a community. Then we also agree what are the resources that are required. Then we ask the community itself, what is it that they're going to contribute in realization of those actions? And when are they going to do it? Then we also involve government and say, what is it that government is going to contribute? Then what is it, what the program is going to contribute? And what is it that other civil society organizations are going to contribute? And this is our framework in terms of our self-reliance exit strategy for community empowerment. Now, it is, okay. Now I'll go to the family empowerment for self-reliance, which is our second layer. So with that, one is that for the family to be recruited, it is recruited by the community. It's led by the community. We build the capacity of the community to enable to do the vulnerability assessment. It's the community that knows best who is poor. For Justin Lungu to go into a community and start saying that this one is poor, it is a risk in itself, because the way I look at who is poor is not the same way that the community does. The community knows itself, knows themselves, who is poor and who is being supported and who is not being supported. So it's led by the community. So there's an assessment form that they use, it's translated into the local language, and the community uses that. And once they've selected, they will tell us, according to us, the most poor is this one. They will do the ranking system and says, within this system, the first ones to be supported is A. For instance, they will say the old and aged, who are 90 and above. The second one is those that are HIV and positive. The third one, it might be single parents. The third one, it could be a sibling-headed household. Then with that, those that are selected, before they are involved in anything, they have to sign what we call a commitment form. A commitment form is simply saying they are ready to participate, they are willing. It is out of their own volition that they are engaging into it. But also they commit into the condition. For instance, our support is time limited. They have to understand that we might not be able to support them beyond the funding resources. Then secondly, we will need them to contribute something, we will not give 100%. So the commitment form is shared with them and all the partners. Then we go into what we call the family development plan. The family development plan is a tool that we use in SOS in the planning of the support that we give to the family, but it is also used as a basis for the monitoring, review, and evaluation of the impact that we are going to do. So in the family development, I will show you how it is labeled, how it looks. Then with that, we have what we call a family book. Every family has a family book. The family book is where all the interventions, all the information of that book, of that family is. It will give you who is in that family. You will see the photos of the members of the household, the details. You will find if they are birth certificate, if there are those that have done their death certificate in it. Then it will also show you who visits and when did he visit, why did that person visit, be it a community member, be it another COS, be it a government, be it FSS. What support have they received, when, and who received it? Then it also talks about it within the family book. It also talks about what training have they received, when and in what. So it describes all the support, all the services that this family has been receiving, but also all the visits that have been happening. Then we normally have what we call the mid-year and full-year family development reviews. Then at the end of this year, the families themselves and the community do an annual self-evaluation where they're saying, from what was planned to happen, how far have they gone? What progress have been made? So this is our case management system within the family strengthening program. Now with that, so once they have signed this, we always have what we call our readiness family for self-reliance. One, we say the family must have an ability. Secondly, it must be willing. Third is that they must, whatever we're doing must be acceptable. Then third is the resources. So this is our formula. Readiness means there's ability, there's willingness, there's acceptability, there are resources. Either the resources are within the family, within the community, within SOS, or with other implementing partners. So that is read by the family. Once the family has been signed, the livelihood capacity development strategy is put in place that we normally use for the support of the economic empowerment of these families. Then we also do the livelihood and skills assessment. Then we develop individual household business plans. And at all times, we want to undertake livelihood diversification, but also to see how we can do the value chain addition to whatever they do. But in all that we do, we always bring that the self-reliance of a family can only be done if there's strong partnership in the livelihood development, be it in livelihood promotion or protection. But whatever we do, we normally want to limit social relief services. Now, in whatever we do in terms of livelihood, we have three areas. There is one that we're dealing with livelihood promotion interventions. We have livelihood protection. Then we have livelihood provisioning. For instance, when they are starting at the beginning, they might not be able to cater for themselves. So we might try to provide certain things that enhance the development of livelihood for promotion and protection at the beginning. This is time limited. And in all what we want to do in terms of economic inclusion, which is what we aim to, I've just given you the different contexts based on the livelihood assessment, what we do. One, we want to ensure that there's access to affordable finance. So our programs work towards promoting access to affordable finance, promoting access to local and international markets, but also our promotion of access to community associations. You know, Africa, we work in associations. It's a cooperative. There's what we call Ubuntu. Some of you have read it. The Ubuntu is all about I am because there's a community. The community is there because I am. So whatever they do in our African, be it a burial, be it at somebody's birth, be it sickness, the community normally comes together and supports each other. So these days you find that there are village savings and lending associations that aim to bring the different members of the community to support each other in businesses. There's also the Youth Savings and Loan Association, plus other government insurance services. So it's those that we want to promote. Then we also want to promote access to business-based information, because for them to know what to engage in, which business is viable, which business is profitable, they need to have that access. Then we also want to ensure that they have access to coaching, mentorship, and business development services. Then the other thing is the access to networking opportunities within the livelihood development. Then lastly, we always want to build access to business enabling partners, be it the business, be it the banking, be it the government livelihood promotion programs. So these are the 7 areas that we normally want to enhance in the economic inclusion. This is about all family empowerment that enables the families to have resources that enable them to keep their children and thereby prevent child abandonment. Now, in the family—
Sorry, Justin, you just have 3 more minutes. Sorry.
All right.
Okay,
So,
thanks.
yes, thanks. So in the family development so as I said, there's a family development plan, which is also about talking about who contributes what and ABCD. And with that, then I mentioned about the family book, which I've talked about, which is that. And then as one of the ways that we trust is that we don't want families to be over-visited. So we also want to monitor how many times our families visited, they are monitored. So we have what we call a family visit monitoring register. And this is an example that we use in it. You know, this is wherever they go, we know when was this family visited, how long did they take, ABCD. So that is how we monitor our visits to the families. In terms of child development, we deal with the education and employability. Those are some of the things that we do to build that individual resilience. Different things, the after school, peer support, career guidance, employability, entrepreneurship, all those kind of things. Then we also deal with child protection and safeguarding issues, both with relation to child protection and community and child protection and child marriage. But we also deal very much with the psychosocial, the mental health. That is one of the areas that our programs stressing. Then, of course, most of the things we deal with the human rights, the child rights is our very big thing. And other than that, we deal with life skills and cultural identity. You know, Africa so much stresses in the spiritual well-being, in the cultural practices, cultural beliefs, the gender and life skills. Some of these are the ones that causes the child abandonment, but so we try to deal with those issues in our things. Then we also deal with sexual rights and sexual reproductive and health rights. Those are the issues that the family program also deals with. So just to give you a scenario, we have various across Eastern, Southern, and West Africa. We have various practices that we have done in the prevention of child abandonment. We have things that we deal with within the community, the Village Saving Association, that's from Botswana, where as a group they're coming and empowering each other. We have also the youth self-reliance that they're dealing with government and different trust, the public-private partnership that helps to build some self-reliance in the youth. Then these are businesses in Zambia that are all about promoting youth and youth employability and entrepreneurship. Then we have also engaged in digitalization, where we want to see how we can enhance service provision, access to different things through community digital hubs. And then those are examples of the savings and village loans. And also we have gone into green economy because some of the poverty is associated with the deforestation due to poor selection of what is destroying the environment. And then we also deal with green economies and climate smart. And finally, we also deal with issues of job creation in terms of vocation training centers. So this is what the family strengthening does in the prevention of child abandonment. Thank you.